Welcome back. You're still watching Nile TV International, and this special coverage regarding the peace summit that took place in the city of Sharm el-Sheikh of Egypt under the chairmanship of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the US President Donald Trump. And we have seen the signing ceremony that took place, officially ending the aggression against the Palestinians by the Israeli occupation forces in the Gaza Strip. And we have seen the press conference that took place after that. And for this special coverage, I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight Ambassador Medhat Meligy, the former Assistant Foreign Minister and a member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Of course, we have seen the signing ceremony of the peace agreement and the press conference that took place afterwards. First, we will be shedding more light on the signing itself of the peace agreement, marking an historic day for the region, and as mentioned by the US President, a historic day in the history of the globe, and not just for the Middle East and not just for the Arab world. How do you see the role of Egypt in all of this?
Well, actually, I think that the role of Egypt was very crucial in this escapade that we've been through since the 8th of October 2023. I think that Egypt helped very much in formulating the peace treaty we are seeing today. Of course, there were a lot of changes that happened throughout the course of it, mainly because the United States, who is the only associates of Israel who is capable of forcing Israel to comply, did not want to do this at the right moment. Actually, if they wanted to do this earlier than that, this would have spared many lives. Unfortunately, and as we heard it today in the Knesset, President Trump as well as Prime Minister Netanyahu, they both believe in enforcing peace by force, and that the rule of force is the only power capable of achieving peace. Of course, this is not the best theory for achieving peace, but this is what the most powerful men in this conflict believe in. And that's why we reached 2 years and 3 days, even more, to reach this agreement. The role of Egypt, I think that this is the only thing that helped to ease the pain to the day that we reached today. And I believe that if intentions are well, this could lead to a historic moment in the history of the region for over a century now. The Palestinian people did not only start suffering in 1948, well before that, during the British colonization of Palestine, when they facilitate the arriving of hundreds and hundreds of Jews and thousands of Jews to colonize Israel at the right moment. Unfortunately, the British played a very bad role in this, but today it's not the time for remembrance this, but it's more of a time to celebrate that we managed to spare some Palestinian lives, because without that the massacre would have continued, the genocide would have continued, and nothing is capable of stopping it, because simply Israel believed that it has to be always living with impunity, and they can do whatever they want because they have the American support in their back, and in the international arena they have the American veto to prevent the international community from taking any concrete steps towards stopping the violence in the region.
During this historic day, we have seen several interactions between the US President Donald Trump and the host for today, His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. President Trump often called President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi a great general and a great president. Several times he said that. Why do you think he said that?
Well, first of all, I mean, we all know that the chemistry was very well between the two presidents in the first term. In the second term, the situation have changed. We've seen a very aggressive American president, and this actually led President Sisi, who have a high self-esteem and dignity. he did not want to accept to be treated like many other leaders of the region and outside the region were treated. And that's why President Sisi so far did not visit the United States, although the close relation that he had with President Trump during the first presidency. And I believe that today this was restored. And I think that the repetition several times of these terms is a kind of, if I may say it between brackets, apology from the American president to the way that he understood the reason why President el-Sisi refused to go to the United States at the beginning of the term. Now President Trump knows exactly the weight of Egypt, understands exactly the weight of His Excellency President el-Sisi, and accordingly he is treating him as such. None of this could have happened, although President Sisi have said it to President Trump as a courtesy, but the reality is that none of this could have happened if Egypt was not involved in the way President Sisi wanted it to be involved in this issue. If President Sisi have accepted the forced displacement of Palestinians, if he has accepted the bribe that were offered by the international community, if he would accept to take the Palestinian in. And we heard a lot of things about the debt of Egypt and how it could be removed or wiped out, or even given some extra billion of dollars in order to liquidate the Palestinian issue.
Yes.
But nevertheless, President Sisi was very firm about the position of Egypt, and in expressing the position of his own people, that he knows most about them, that they would not accept the liquidation of the Palestinian issue. Egypt is the country where its people are really related to the Palestinian cause. I mean, when we are talking about the position of Egypt since 1948,
yes,
and how we saw it even before the revolution, and how that we tried to stop this cancer from spreading in the region. So the idea is not about the current regime, but it has always been a strategic issue for the Egyptian people.
Yes, and given the facts that you have mentioned, Mr. Ambassador, since day one, the refusal by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi for the proposal of the US President Donald Trump to be relocating the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip into Egypt, into Jordan, into other nations, of course, the refusal of President al-Sisi and the Jordanian King Abdullah II, do you think that today marks a diplomatic victory for the political leadership of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and a victory for the Palestinian cause and the Palestinians?
Well, actually, the word victory is a word that I think needs some explanation, because unfortunately,
yes,
the parameters on which we are describing victory could be claimed by each and every one of the parties.
Yes.
I mean, if we are talking military speaking, Israel have claimed the victory by killing most of Hamas as it's trying to portray it, and at the same time it killed over 60, I believe even 70,000 Palestinians, not to mention the double of this number that were injured and so on. Hamas on the other side did not concede and did not accept the defeat, and they even, we've seen the scenes that we've seen the last couple of days, that they are trying to restore peace and even ambush some of the Palestinians who worked with the Israelis, and actually this did not show a very good picture. But just that I wanted to say that Hamas is still ready, and this actually casts some doubt about the real position of Hamas, and I think we should be discussing this issue, because I think that what we are celebrating today is not actually, as we are trying to say, a victory. It's a victory, yes, of course, because we are sparing the life of Palestinians
for peace.
And I think any effort in this direction should be saluted, and that's why we salute the efforts of each and everyone who made this day happen today. Having said that, I think that we have to understand that as long as we do not mention clearly the creation and the establishing of a Palestinian state, then we are far from reaching a closure to all this. Let's try to recapitulate and remember the words of His Excellency President Sisi since the 8th of October, that if we do not reach a creation of a Palestinian state on the borders of the 4th of June 1967 with East Jerusalem as capital of the newborn Palestinian state, then we will never have peace. And this is the word that we have to keep in mind. What happened today is simply a strategic step from the United States by taking some of the ideas that Egypt had previously proposed to reach a ceasefire and implement it as a peace plan.
Yes.
But we are far from the peace. Peace will never be restored in the region unless we have a Palestinian state. This is what will take away from the Palestinian resistance their raison d'etre, their reason to be, because there is an occupation. And as long as there is an occupation, we will have different fractions. They shouldn't be Hamas, they shouldn't be called Hamas, they shouldn't be called Jihad or any other Palestinian movement.
So what does this say about the future of the
That's
resistance
the point.
fighters?
I mean, if we look at the 21 peace plan, between brackets once again, of President Trump, I believe that this peace plan, or the so-called peace plan, although it's trying to a large extent detail the obligations that Hamas should be observing, we do not see the same firmness when it comes to the Israeli obligation, whether about the withdrawal, whether about the liberation of the skies and the borders of Gaza, or any of this. Israel did not forget, but they are exhausted, and they exhausted everyone else in this adventure of theirs. I mean, killing 70,000 persons is not an easy thing to do. It requires time, it requires a lot of energy. We've heard about Israeli officers who committed suicide because the atrocities were too hard even on them. And let's face it, I mean, everybody
Yes.
today was happy for the simple reason that we became sick from seeing all this killing. So we are welcoming the little offer that were offered today, and we are celebrating it, and we should, because we are celebrating life. We are celebrating life of the Palestinian. But the peace as such, as I said, it will not be restored before the Palestinian state is created, and these are the words of President Sisi, and they totally believe in them.
We have seen the statements of the US President Donald Trump stating that there is other stages that will be implemented according to the rules and the regulations of the peace plan, maybe the stage 3, stage 4, but what about the governance of the Gaza Strip? Who will be responsible for governing the Gaza Strip? Because we have heard that there will be an international transitional council headed by Trump himself, and Hamas could be laying down the arms.
Well, actually, also there is something else. I mean,
Yes.
just to complete your sentence, that President Trump said on on Air Force One today, I heard him personally saying that Hamas asked to restore peace there, and and even the reporter was asking that Hamas is trying to weaponize itself again. And he said that, yes, we know about that, and we accepted this for a certain period of time. So that means that the situation is not yet 100% stable. But once again, if all the parties accept the creation of a Palestinian state next to the Israeli state, then at this moment we can be talking about peace. There are steps, yes. But tell me, when in history did we ever see the United States taking a step against the will of Israel? Just few days ago, actually weeks ago, was the last veto used from the United States to prevent the international community from punishing Israel from its action. And not just that, actually, several times the veto was used to just destroy the idea of achieving a ceasefire, a simple ceasefire. And the United States did not accept, and as we have seen in the Security Council, The only hand that were left was the one of the American representative in the Security Council of the United Nations. So the United States will never do anything strategically against Israel. Maybe they differ sometimes about tactics to use, but I think that the exchange speech today at the Knesset says it all. And I believe that the speech said by President Trump and the one of Netanyahu and how they praised each other show to which extent they are both on the same wavelength. And that if we are expecting that the United States will force Israel to comply is delusional. The United States will never do that. President Trump is always bragging about being the best American friend Israel ever had.
Yes.
So how do we expect from the best friend to take actions against the will of Israel? Not just that. I think that in a very rare scene that we have seen today is to ask the Israeli president to waive the charges against Prime Minister Netanyahu. This is unprecedented. I mean that there are charges according to the democracy they claim to believe in.
Mr. Ambassador, how would you describe the spontaneous approach of the US President Donald Trump? Because you mentioned that he called the Prime Minister of Israel the friend of the United States President. We have seen him for the past maybe 1 or 2 hours. He welcomed everyone. He spoke and he chatted with every leader present at the peace agreement summit in Sharm el-Sheikh. There was a friendly chat. He spoke a lot with His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. He spoke with the representatives of Italy, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, even leaders who were not even there. He said that he spoke to them over the phone today. How would you see this spontaneous approach of the US President for today, especially as he mentioned one of the most important days in the history of the Middle East?
Well, President Trump obviously was extremely ecstatic today, extremely happy about the achievement that he did, that he finally is the first president who managed since dawn of the Middle East history to achieve what he thinks is a peace and a long-lasting peace. That's why I got a little bit astonished to see how many times he promised that this is going to be the last war in the region. How could you be so sure? I mean, Israel until this moment, and this actually was the first statement by Prime Minister Netanyahu after the agreement was published, or the peace accord, or the 21 points of Mr. Trump, that Israel did not concede and it did not accept the creation of or the establishment of a Palestinian state. And he believed that this is the biggest of all victories. And he mentioned it as the first point.
Yes.
So we are talking about an Israeli prime minister who believes that he will never accept an establishment of the Palestinian state, and that yet, nevertheless, he can still achieve peace. This is an impossible task. Not President Trump, not Prime Minister Netanyahu, not any Prime Minister or any American president.
So what was the role of Egypt in this balance?
Well, the role of Egypt is to, just like President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said it and repeated it several times, without the establishment of a Palestinian state, none of the countries of the region will have peace. This is ABC of the problem that we are living in the Middle East. The idea of not giving a political horizon for the Palestinian people will make us reach again the same place where we are right now. God forbid. I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that one day I will come on this same platform and you tell me, you see, Mr. Ambassador, you were wrong about what you thought.
Yes.
I believe that Israel, as long as it doesn't want to accept establishment of a Palestinian state, then what we are having right now is just a long-lasting, we can call it truce, or we can call it even a ceasefire, but it's not peace. Peace will never be achieved without a creation of a Palestinian state. Make no mistake, the Palestinian people, those people who are, I mean, who who actually shocked the world with their resilience for 2 years, and still they are attached to their land. They don't have any buildings actually to say that they can be attached to. Israel carpet bombing everything and destroyed everything, and nevertheless, as some reporters have mentioned it before, we have the audacity today to hear some leaders praising Israel and thanking Israel for accepting the peace proposal. No, let's not forget that there is a genocide behind this. The President and the Prime Minister of Israel and his last Minister of Defense are both wanted by the International Criminal Court. The situation is not as brilliant as it seems. We've seen many leaders today in Sharm el-Sheikh threatening that they will leave if Prime Minister Netanyahu would show up his face to this summit. I think that the situation is far from being resolved. But still, I don't want to take the happiness away from the face of the children of Gaza and the civilian of Gaza. Yes, it's a big step that we reach a ceasefire. I hope it's a sustainable ceasefire. But the peace, as President Sisi said it, and I will stick to his own wording, will never be possible without the establishment of a Palestinian state.
And this will be leading to another important topic and another important point, which is the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, something that was tackled by both His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the US President Donald Trump, especially by President Trump of the United States, saying that we have a lot of wealthy leaders standing behind this, supporting us, supporting the Gaza Strip. What is the next step in coordination between the United States and Egypt?
Well, actually, I mean, I think that many European countries also took the lead, and I mean, I just read that the United Kingdom have, Mr. Starmer have said that his country is going to donate 20 million sterling pound, I think, to help with the restoration of Gaza. What I want to say that all these steps that is aiming to ease the life of the Palestinian will not find lots of obstacles in the way, even from Israel. It's okay. Let them eat. Let them drink. Let them have a house. Let them have a tent. This will be accepted. Let them have the state? No, never. And this is what will differentiate. So the idea of reconstruction, although I totally agree with President Sisi that we have to reconstruct Gaza, but let me ask you something. Were the Palestinians free the 6th of October 2023? They were not free, and they were suffering from what everybody knew back then as the biggest open-air prison in the world. Is this what we want them to become? Another time that they live in the same dilemma? No, they need this time that we establish a state. And I think that President Trump understands this, because his promises were so rich and so abundant that I think that he knows that this is the only solution, and that he is going in a certain way to help. I hope that he will do that. He will do it by trying to convince the Israelis that this is the only lasting solution and the long-last solution that can achieve real peace in the region. And don't forget that he said a couple of days ago, just before arriving here, he said a very important word. He said Israel cannot continue to fight the world. Israel cannot continue to be to lead the way to destruction and lose everything else. Israel needs the world. The idea of Israel destructing everything and not caring about anything simply because it enjoys the support of the United States cannot be forever. What I want to say simply is that if we have one American president who is strong enough to oppose Israel, I think the situation will change dramatically all over the Middle East. But we are waiting for this leader who is not objecting to the idea of opposing Israel and enforcing the international law. Let's remember that all what we are asking for is to implement the international law and to implement the right of the Palestinian to self-determination. This is all what we are asking for, and I don't think that this is too much to ask for. And this will restore peace, because all these violent movements in the region will cease to find a reason to exist. Why would they be there? I mean, to liberate what? You are a free country now. What do you need to liberate from? Like any other countries. I mean, I just want to remember one thing here, and I think that this is a day also of remembrance, that many Israeli leaders were involved with what is known today as terrorist movements, including, for instance, Prime Minister Menachem Begin, who signed the peace treaty with Egypt. He was a leading terrorist in Israel before switching to becoming a political leader and even signing a peace treaty with Egypt. And I believe that Hamas and the weapons of Hamas, that this is also a very delicate issue here, and that might trigger a lot of violence again if Hamas refused to concede its weapons. We heard things about freezing the weapons. We heard about the possibility of giving these weapons to Arab countries or even to an international community, but not to the Israelis, and not to surrender, because they are here to reach independence. And as long as there is no Palestinian state, then they will continue to exist.
Following the signing ceremony of the peace agreement to be ending the war in the Gaza Strip, we have seen a couple of press conferences or a couple of speeches by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and the other for the American President Donald Trump. In the conclusion of the speech of His Excellency President al-Sisi, the Egyptian President, he awarded the American President with the Order of the Nile. What does this say about the relationship between both presidents, and about the future relations and the bilateral relations between Egypt and the United States?
I think it shows two things. First thing, that we owe it to President Trump that he spared the life of the Palestinian. After all, President Trump is not a bloody person. On the contrary, he really believes in peace. But of course, the way he thinks of achieving this peace is a little bit different than our perception. But he genuinely believes in peace.
Yes.
Unlike many Israeli leaders who do not believe in peace, they just believe that the glue that is actually making all the Israeli people come together is the war, the common war that they have against all the world around them. They have always lived this victim feeling, and this is a very sad thing. I don't know if you or your viewers know that I served personally in Israel for 4 years, and I was really in touch with the Israeli community, and this is something that they lived. I mean, they've been victimized for so long that even now, after having their own country and everything, this feeling did not leave them yet, and I think they need some time to liberate their souls from this feeling of being a victim for such a long time. We were talking about centuries of abuse in Europe and everywhere, except unfortunately in the Arab countries, where they had their businesses flourish, where they have their life among Egyptians and among Arabs with no problems at all. And actually, this is how they were received when they first arrived to Palestine. They received them as refugees who are seeking refuge from the atrocities that happened to them in Europe and the atrocities of the Second World War and so on. But I think that the most important thing today is to get rid of this feeling and reaching this. You talked about the speeches and the relationship, so we mentioned one part of the relation. And I think the second part is something very subjective, very Egyptian, that President al-Sisi read, as we say it in Arabic if I translate it, or understood exactly the personality of President Trump. And he understood that such a gesture would mean a lot to President Trump. And of course, we are trying to...
And also the fighter jets escorting him till the airport of Sharm el-Sheikh.
Of course, and this is the Egyptian courtesy that we are always used to do. But at the same time, let's not forget that President Sisi, who to a certain point understood that he cannot go under the previous circumstances to visit the United States and visit the American president. I think that the visit of President Trump removed this, broke the ice, let's say, in this specific step, and I think that it's quite important now that the two leaders are going to be able to consult each other on many issues, because President Sisi is an honest and clear person, and I think that President Trump can really benefit from the wisdom of President Sisi and his knowledge about the situation. And President Trump listens. Maybe he does not process at the same moment, but on the long run he processes. And we have examples for that. If you remember the Riviera that President Trump spoke about, and that he wants to seize Gaza. By which power, Mr. President? He said, by the power of the United States of America. Now with the peace plan, we do not see this. On the contrary, we see that this is going to be built for the Palestinians. And I think that this is a change because he listens. And this is what I want to say, that in a normal way, under normal and quiet circumstances, President Trump is able to process and understand and sees the reality of the situation, especially here in the Middle East, where it's really complicated.
And speaking as well about the trip of the U.S. President to the region for today, we have seen him earlier in Israel, as he mentioned that the Israelis are overjoyed. They are dancing on the streets with the news that peace is there, that the ceasefire is there, that the aggression has stopped, or the war has stopped against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. What does this say about the political future of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
I think that overall, that's why I think that the voices of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are a little quieter now, because the wave is overwhelming. And let's go back just 2 days ago when Mr. Steve Witkoff was speaking to the families of the hostages.
Yes.
And when he just mentioned the name of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and what we heard in the boo that we heard about people not liking at all how Mr. Netanyahu dealt with this, because they felt that he doesn't really care about the hostages, although the first thing he spoke about today, that we freed the hostages. No, it's not thank to Prime Minister Netanyahu, but thanks to the continuous effort of Egypt, and of course the efforts of President Trump, who wants to see the refugees, the hostages released. Of course, I would have wished that President Trump would speak with the same enthusiasm about the thousands of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli dungeons. But unfortunately, the whole international community, when they are talking, they are always talking about the Israeli hostages and not talking about the Palestinian hostages. So many of them are under administrative arrest with no trial, with no judge, with no lawyers, and nevertheless nobody calls them hostages, although this is the right terminology, the right word that should be used with them. But because people sees the Israeli state as a state with a government, with a capable government, so they believe that those are the bad people that should be put in prison, while when it comes to Hamas, they see it as the bad people, the terrorist group, and so on. But I think that one of the most important things that we have to mention, and I will not focus here, although we should, on Hamas or other resistance movement.
Yes.
What I want to talk about here is the PLO and is the Palestinian Authority. What is the Palestinian Authority? The idea of keeping the Palestinians away as if we have two Palestine. This is a very dangerous idea. And I think, I'm not very optimistic, but I mean, the Palestinians did not show any step until today, after thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of killed civilian Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank. They did not show any sign of reconciliation together. And I think this is one of the most important things. And if you do not reconcile today, after all the atrocities you've been through, when are you going to reconcile? You are not giving a good example to in front of the world who is watching you. And actually Israel is saying, which Palestinian should we be talking?
Yes.
And they are different and they have different opinions, and actually we don't believe in any of them. Your division is weakening you more, while your unity will actually force Israel to comply and to listen, because having one united voices in front of Israel will definitely help to strengthen the Palestinian movement. They shouldn't wait for President Trump to take decisions for them, to give them their freedom. At least be united and try to show the world what is the Palestinian civilization and how decent you are with each other. Because we've seen the last couple of days Hamas committing crimes against other fellow Palestinians. And I think that this does not show a good sign of how Hamas will deal in the future, especially that we have a very delicate issue that we spoke about earlier, which is the weapons of Hamas and what will happen out of it. So we are in a very delicate moment, and we hope that they will reason the situation so that we can come out stronger and not weaker.
Yes, Ambassador Medhat Meligy, the former Assistant Foreign Minister and a member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Nile TV International.
Thank you again for having me.
Anytime. And this brings us to the end of this special coverage coming your way from Nile TV International regarding the Peace Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, the resort of Egypt, under the chairmanship of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, alongside the American President Donald Trump. Thank you for watching and goodbye.